What's up, squad? It's Brandon from the band Tucson. Thank you so much for joining me today. I was just reading some articles, thinking about what some topics I could talk about. Nothing really stuck out to me, or if it did stick out to me, it wasn't anything that I had enough information that I could say anything insightful about. So I'm still monitoring it. But I figured it'd be a great time just to talk through some of the topics that I came across that caught my eye that I'm going to be following in the near future. One was Brazil and Mercosur, the South American trading bloc, are looking for closer ties with UAE. Obviously, this stuck out to me because one, I think Mercosur leaves a lot to be desired as far as the economic bloc, and there's definitely a lot of room for those guys to run. I'm surprised they don't do a lot more work with Africa, but I think it's one of those things. The Southern Hemisphere always have an issue getting on board geopolitically. They're really not at the forerunner of geostrategy such as the Northern Hemisphere, obviously America, the Middle East, Europe, Russia, China, India, etc. South America has just always struggled with geopolitics. You can link that back to their colonial past, etc. But it was interesting to see these two countries. These two players aren't in the region. There's a lot better places for South America to get the resources that UAE has to offer. That's a lot more closer to South America. And vice versa. The UAE can get an abundance of the resources that it can get from South America at a lot of places closer to it. So I don't know if these talks are just going to be. So that's why it stuck out because it was just odd to me. So it's nothing definitive, but it looks for opportunity maybe for Brazil to get just more money from the UAE, but it doesn't seem like anything groundbreaking or geostrategically significant. But it was interesting to see uh, Brazil and Mercosur try to build stronger ties with the Middle East. Unfortunately, Brazil, it's just two countries I always say. I think they are, for whatever reasons, maybe underperformed their potential, and that is Nigeria and Brazil. Like there's a country like Mozambique. Like I think Mozambique is geostrategically blessed, right? And but it's doesn't have the infrastructure. It doesn't have uh, the unity that's required to capitalize, and it's a lot of moving pieces they will still have. They're just really in a great location, but they haven't put everything together. Whereas Nigeria and Brazil, they're solving units, but it seems as though even though they're recognized as a sovereign unit, everything's already in place. They just have this failure to launch for some reason, and they drastically underperform their potential. Another story that stuck out to me as I was looking, Iraq is building approved what $5 billion pipeline from Basra to Haditha, and it's not that much comments on it. It's just a release saying this pipeline has been approved, and it stuck out to me because I was trying to find what makes this pipeline so special. Obviously, Haditha is in the interior of the country. Basra is a port city, and I couldn't find what makes this pipeline so different. All it's going to do is probably double down on the infrastructure. So maybe it's just the ownership. Maybe it's a certain. When I couldn't find who's actually going to build it, they just approved the funding. So we'll see who build it. That probably might be if it was a Western country they're building, maybe it might be a Western country just trying to make sure they get their hands on some Iraqi oil. A lot of Iraqi oil experts go to India and China, so I really wanted to see, how does this supplement their current pipeline infrastructure? What does this do that their current pipeline infrastructure don't do? So I'll be following that as well. Iraq is a very interesting country, especially now with Syria. It's slowly coming to the West. I just read an article about how Ukraine's already reaching out saying, hey, we're going to give you food relief. And Syria is already in play, as we've said already, as the West looks to encircle Russia. So with Iraq now being this cornucopia of oil, uh, in its role is going to be highly strategic. Iraq has the ability in 50 years to be probably the most powerful Arab country in the world. Egypt usually is seen as one, or Saudi Arabia. I'll put it this way, as the most influential. Right now, you have countries like Egypt, where Egypt's kind of like the foot soldiers. Egypt has a demography, but Egypt is extremely hard done by resource wise. So Egypt really kind of goes to the tune of Saudi Arabia, UAE at the moment, even though it has a larger demographics. So the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they got the money, but they don't got the demographics. So, and you've seen that, as I always talk about with Saudi Arabia and Yemen, how Saudi Arabia has such issues trying to bring Yemen to heel, and that's a whole nother story. Like now they got the Houthis in Yemen shooting missiles in Israel, which is odd because they're not even nowhere near each other. So not only is Saudi Arabia unable to bring Yemen to heel, but they're unable to stop Yemeni missiles from flying over the country. Because how else are these Yemeni missiles getting all the way from from Yemen, the Arabian Peninsula, to the Levant? I find that to be odd as well. So that's going to be interesting. But Saudi Arabia basically saying, despite their expensive and ridiculous amount of military spending, they haven't been able to oppose their will. And another instance of that will be Qatar, right? They couldn't really. They tried to punish Qatar and Al Jazeera. They tried to put a blockade on countries that you can pretty much say that failed miserably. They weren't able to sway anybody as far as even tiny Qatar, right? Um, Even though Qatar geopolitically is punches well above its weight. So with this said, Iraq demographic boom coming as well as this vast amount of oil wealth. It's going to be a very interesting country to watch over the years as it evolve and the direction it seems to take, especially currently right now with its great allegiance towards the Asian powers of India and China, which it relies on heavily for its oil exports. And then the last article I'll talk about was an article referencing pretty much alluding to, well, so we have Georgia. So Georgia, the election presidency went to one would say a Western loyal, I mean a Russian loyalist. So that's going to be contentious right there. But it all feeds into this narrative again of how long can Putin withstand the pressure. I like to look at international trips, and Putin's world is really small now. He really just travels to the stands, Belarus, mostly his neighboring countries, and there's really not a lot of places to go. And I'm thinking about where is his, especially with the fall of Syria, where is his oasis? Where can he go to get a break? And I stumbled across the relationship with India. Now, historically, geopolitically speaking, geostrategically speaking, geographically speaking, it's always been a sort of natural alliance, if you were to look at it, of how these countries play out between France, Russia, India, Vietnam, and Japan. This is kind of a natural alliance because it balances out their their opposition, primarily in Europe with Germany, between France and Russia, and with Asia you have India, Vietnam, Japan, Russia surrounding China. So that's why you can see this strategic alignment if it was to come to fruition. The fact that it doesn't exist speaks more to the political aspect than it does the utility of the relationship. The relationship will be highly valued by all those members because each one can pull something from the various members, but it doesn't exist. Reason why I go into this is because Russia has been dropping from a top weapons exporter to India, and they're being supplanted by the French. So France has rolled up to be the number two weapon supplier in the world, um, behind the United States. So, and they've taken over the top spot within India. So you have this situation where India is moving closer and closer and closer to the West as they are deepening ties. Everybody knows like India has a great affinity towards Israel, as well as that they have a strong relationship with Japan. So Russia is everly more increasingly, I would say, sideline, and you really wonder where their life raft is going to come from right now. China has this turtle strategy, it seems like, where they're just looking to build, 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 and when they poke their head out, actually will assert themselves. They'll be too strong to be opposed, and we'll see if that's the case. But until then, it's kind of seen like, as you see, like Russians are over here. They're bringing in North Koreans. I'm assuming not to exhaust their population too much, but Russians are relying on North Korean soldiers to supplement their forces right now. So as you see these, there's this Russian influence starts to wane. The two questions obviously come about is uh, how long can the current Russian administration, would withstand this pressure? And the other question is India. Is like, who can stop India? I always said, I always see the 21st century Indian and as a tripolar century between the United States, India, and China. And I think right now India is about to enjoy this great advancement up as they become more integrated in the global economy. Uh, they have so much to offer. If you don't believe me, ask Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, who's got a lot of heat talking about H-1B1 visas and Indian talent. But another thing is with China there, especially, even though I think China and U.S. have a lot of more in common as far as alliance than the U.S. India has these roots with Anglo culture, being part of the British Empire, etc. It's an easy transition. Pretty much so where the United Kingdom went, the Indians went as well, whether parts of Africa, the Caribbean, etc. So India has one of the larger, if not the largest diaspora in the world as well. So it's a massive country demographically. Its tentacles are everywhere, and it's an industrious culture. So you really see like how I don't understand what's to check. To me, I always say also geographically, it's in the Indian Ocean, right? There's not that much land in the Indian Ocean. They are the trump card in the Indian Ocean. No country in the Indian Ocean can really rival them. So you have this situation. So especially when it comes to like checks and balances and so much, and I think it has a natural um, stronger position on China. I think China is actually in a very insecure spot the way its demographics and trade is aligned, especially in comparison to India. So India hasn't even scratched a fraction of, I think, the influence that it can have in this world. So right now it's just a level of ascendancy and getting their capacity to the level, or getting their potential to measure up to the capacity that they have right now through their strong demographics. So I don't know how the West is going to balance India. Well, I do know how they're going to balance them, but it's going to be interesting to see how India is going to play off that. And the way I always think they're going to balance it is the West has to flip Russia. To me, that's the only logical way that the West is going to be able to come to the table in 50 years and have a conversation amongst equals with behemoth countries such as India and China. The West needs Russia. They need Russia, India. They need India. Excuse me. The West needs Russia and Canada and the United States. These great resource storage units, and they can go to these massive populations which don't have the best resources, right? And they rely on those imports to supplement the resources of their people. And then I think the West will be able to talk to them as equals. But without Russia, I find it hard. And once these countries are going, if they're getting, especially being on the Eurasian continent where they can be immune from blockades or sea power because they can base their infrastructure throughout Central Asia, another critical region, it's going to be hard to see how the U.S. can really influence those countries in the future. So those are just some thoughts based on some articles that I read. Let me know if you read anything interesting. Comment below. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, take care. Back to up.